All right, we're here now talking to Greg Tepper of Dave Campbell, Texas Football, and of course Fox Sports Southwest is shows he does on the Saturdays for high school football. He is the guru, the man about high school Texas football here, and wanted to get his. First of all, thanks for joining us, Greg.
Yeah, happy to join you. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Absolutely, and I got to say this is really fun for me because this is the first year that I haven't had a job during this season, and I can just do whatever I want to do during this crazy football season.
Yeah, whenever you can really dive headlong into Texas high school football, the one thing I found in my career is that the more engaged that you get, the more fun you have. And so, yeah, this has been a fantastic season, and I think we're in for a fantastic finish.
Well, let's talk about this. The reason I called mainly is because I'm passionate about Texas high school football, and I know you are. Anybody that's ever seen anything you've done can just see it in your face, your eyes, and the way you talk about it. And I'm the same way, and I want to. But I love the Mart Panthers. I've been doing this for 3 years with them guys, and they've won 2 state championships in a row since I've joined in. So Coach Hoffman will not let me leave. So this is the 3rd year. We're going to meet Fall City again. Tell me your expectations, maybe some of your thoughts on this matchup between the Mart Panthers and the Fall City Beavers.
Yeah, this is a game that I think even since the preseason we've kind of had on our radar. And I know in talking with both Coach Hoffman and with Britt Hart, the coach down there at Fall City, that they've kind of been eyeballing each other from across the room all season as well, knowing that, look, Fall City is probably the favorite to come out of Region 4, and Mart is probably the favorite to come out of Region 3, knowing full well that they would meet this weekend for a spot at AT&T Stadium. So this is not something that I think is necessarily unexpected. Earlier in the year, when Mart took those 3 losses, I think there may have been this notion from some people across the state that, maybe this isn't the same Mart team of old. Here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, we weren't ready to give up that easily. We thought, this is a team. Those 3 losses were all teams that were bigger than them, and turns out really good teams. Another team is in Refugio that's playing this weekend for a spot at AT&T Stadium among those squads. And so this is we weren't ready to give up on this Panthers squad, and I think that faith has been well rewarded here. This is a Mart team that I think is playing its best football right now. You're starting to see this team peak late, and that's kind of a hallmark under Coach Hoffman, is that this is a team that plays its best ball in December. Once they get to December, that's when they're especially hard to beat. Going up against a Fall City team that look, as we mentioned, had very high hopes coming into the year, and for good reason. This is a team that had a lot of experience back from a state semifinalist a year ago, and has eyes set on AT&T Stadium. They down there in Fall City, they think this is the year. They really do, and they think that this is the year that they are going to break through and win another state championship down there. This is a team in Fall City that is built similarly than teams of the past. They are a grinded out running team that prides itself on its rushing defense. That's the one thing that they're old school. There's nothing real fancy about Fall City. They want to line it up. They got good size up front, and they want to pound it at you, and then they want to stop you from running. In this particular matchup, what's going to be interesting is that the bigger team, at least up front, is going to be Fall City. They have terrific size up front. But the faster team, and I would say the more dynamic team, is probably Mart. Especially the way that they've gotten this running game going. I feel like they're hitting their stride right now. The name to know for Fall City is probably Brady Lissy, their outstanding running back, who is really a superstar, a running back that they can ask to do a variety of different things. If they need him to carry the ball 40 times, he's ready for it. He's a guy who has that kind of stamina, who has that kind of burst. Last week in their kind of squeaker win over Bremont, he carried the ball for nearly 300 yards and was a dynamic guy who, when he gets out in space, even with the kind of speed that Mart has, he's a burner, and he can pull away from even the fastest defenses. The key for me, this is a game that, again, if you go back to last year's state semifinal between Mart and Fall City, I thought Fall City came in with a terrific game plan, which was, we're just not going to let Mart have the ball. We're going to keep it away from them. We're going to go on these long clock-draining drives and then hope to get a couple of stops. Well, in the end, Mart came up with a couple more stops than they do, and they came away with a win. I get the feeling that Britt Hart is going to look at that and say, if we can just execute that game plan, that's our best option. But I think that the explosiveness that you're seeing from Mart probably gives them a small advantage in this game. The higher scoring this game is, the more it benefits Mart. They are a team that wants to push the tempo. They want to push the points. They want to get this game into the 30s or even the low 40s. That's where they're going to be comfortable. This is a game that Fall City's probably not built to get to a track meet with Mart. So it's a super interesting matchup between, I would say, two of probably the three best teams in 2A Division II, and it should be a real fun one.
Well, and I think that this year, even though the scores have indicated elsewise, Mart is – everybody kind of came in and said, Mart's not as good as they were last year, and they're not. But there's something happened. I think it happened more of the Holland game they played early in the season, but really with Refugio to show that these young kids can play with anybody, and since then they have been lights out. The biggest difference I think that might help Mart out, and again, we talk about Fall City and everybody says Lissy. We know he can do. For Mart, it was Rodrell Freeman coming into the season, but Rodrell Freeman is not the story of this 2019 Mart Panther team. It's all the other guys. I mean, Campbell, Martin, everybody, Hickman, even the second-level guys, Clater. It's just they can give the ball to anybody, and they can break it on you at any time. They've had so many weapons this year, and that's what's really been key. And, of course, the defense has stayed solid. Not as good as last year, but they have stayed solid. And I think that might be the key, is just more guys. And we thought coming in, because there's only really 3 seniors doing anything for Mart this year. There's such a young team, but they have come together, and they are playing really lights out at this time of the year. And I just feel like on Fall City's side, not seeing them enough, I can't say, okay, do they have enough playmakers? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a super interesting point, and I think your point is well taken. It gets back to the idea of peaking at the right time. That let's remember that this Mart team has a lot of youngsters. This Mart team has a lot of underclassmen, and fundamentally, here they are. They're playing. I mean, let's just do some math. They're playing game 15 this season, okay? Which means that in a lot of ways, for a lot of teams, these guys who maybe are sophomores and juniors are playing in. They fundamentally are playing in another season. They played an extra half season already, and those extra weeks of practice add up. And when you're talking about a program like Mart that's made deep playoff runs pretty much every year, you're talking about getting those extra weeks of practice. You're talking about these youngsters who, yes, maybe once they get to the varsity level in the early going, it's going to take some time. It's going to take a little bit of they're going to need to simmer for a little bit. But now this is a team that I think, even if you look at this team and it's littered with sophomores and juniors and in some cases some freshmen who are playing key roles, but at the same time, these are guys who have already played a season, in a lot of ways, a season and a half. Mm-hmm. And they've got that experience. It's hard to call this a young ball club when really they've got 14 games under their belt. And that's something that I think is really interesting, and why you've seen this team grow. I think especially when you look at the quarterback spot, right, with Kyler Martin. This is a guy that I think it took some time. I think it took some time for him to really settle in and feel comfortable running the offense. But go ask Munster if Kyler Martin is comfortable running that offense. Because I'll tell you what that coaching staff, what Brady Kern's going to say. He's going to say, oh yeah, he's intimately comfortable with that role as well. So I think you're right. To me, the multiplicity of the threats for Mart are certainly going to be more than with Fall City. With Fall City, in a lot of ways, if you bottle up Brady Lissy, their plan B is not great. They don't have. I mean, they're not a great throwing team. It's not like in past years. Last year they had an outstanding quarterback who is no longer there. They're not the kind of passing team they have. If you bottle up Brady Lissy, their plan B is only okay. As opposed to Mart, where if let's just say Rodrell Freeman is plan A, if they bottle him up, well, that's fine. They've got about 2 or 3 other guys that can beat you. So, yeah, I would say that the advantage as far as versatility is concerned belongs to Mart.
All right, now I'll leave you with this, and then we'll get our final thoughts. But here's your guys. Clydarian Campbell, 10th grade, starter. DeTravion Medlock, 10th grade, starter. Demarion Medlock, 10th grade, starter. Kyler Martin, quarterback, 12th grade starter. They're just like we just said. I mean, these guys are just doing some great things, and you've got the biggest one of them all, of course, Rodrell Freeman, just a junior. He's going to be back next year. But this should be a great matchup. And I tell you what, we just cannot wait to bring it to you. These guys out here Friday night, they're going to be listening to this here in a little while. But Greg, thank you so much for your time. I know you got a lot of things going on, but any final thoughts here before we let you go?
Yeah, I think that this is the one thing I'll say is, and I've said this before, and I hope Coach Hoffman hears this because I know it'll embarrass him. But you folks in Mart are really lucky to have the coaching staff they did,
Yes.
and I think that it bears repeating that there are a lot of programs in the state who would absolutely do whatever it takes to get a guy like Kevin Hoffman, and not just him, but that entire staff operating things. It's an organization. You never worry about a team being prepared. There are times when Mart's going to go out there and they're not going to have the most talent, but at the same time, they're always going to come in with a game plan, and that's something that I don't think you can necessarily say at every program. So I've got a lot of respect for the Mart program, and who knows? Maybe we'll see you guys in Arlington next week.
Well, he means what he says. He says it every week, and it's everybody says it, but he means it. Mart does what Mart does, and we ain't going to change, and it should be the same this week for the Mart Panthers taking on the Fall City Beaver. And, again, thank you, Greg Tepper of Dave Campbell's Texas Football. We really appreciate your time, and have fun this weekend.
Absolutely. You guys have a good one.
Happy holidays.